Hey everybody, it is Matt Bowles here. I am super excited for this event tonight. I have Sarah Weaver with me, who is such an interesting and impressive and inspiring person on so many levels. Not only is she an incredibly successful and talented real estate investor, which is, of course, what you're going to hear about tonight, but she has also used her real estate investing and her business acumen, her entrepreneurship to create a lifestyle for herself where she can travel the world and do epic things and be location independent in addition to financially independent, which is a really key piece, I think, of this whole thing that a lot of people overlook, right? Because a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to like build this business rehabbing houses. And then they kind of like block themselves into one particular place and they're running a business and stuff. And so one of the things that I love about you, Sarah, and what you and I connected on must have been 7 years ago. You and I connected was that we were both in real estate and we were both doing this digital nomad world travel thing and doing epic stuff. So while people are jumping on the webinar, before we get into the real estate stuff, let's just chat a little bit about your lifestyle. And I hung out with your community virtually online last week. And you were hosting this amazing event, and I was part of it. And you were in Sri Lanka, and now you're back in the U.S. And next week you're going to be in Guatemala, and this is your life. So I would love to hear just a little bit about the lifestyle that you've created, just to give folks a little bit more of a sense of it. And then you and I were just talking about the fact. I want to ask for one travel story because you and I were just talking about the fact that we have both summited Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, which I don't know about you, but for me, that was definitely the most difficult thing I've ever done in my entire life. And I would love to hear a little bit about your experience doing that and how that relates to your real estate investing and business and life philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Weaver. And as Matt graciously said, I have built a real estate portfolio while building a pretty epic life. And epic for me, I meet tons of people who are saying things like, oh, I could never. And I'm sure, Matt, you get that as well. Like I took to come home from Sri Lanka, I took a 3-hour train, a 1-hour taxi, a 3.5-hour flight to Kuala Lumpur, an hour flight to Singapore, a 15-hour flight to San Francisco, and then a 3.5-hour flight to Kansas City, to then drive 3 hours to Omaha to visit my grandma in the hospital. So the things that we do for our families, no. But I mean, not very many people are jealous of that part, right? But I'm not posting about that part on Instagram. I'm posting, look at me at surf camp in Sri Lanka, and look at me, texting contractors from, a mountain in the middle of the island in Sri Lanka. And so I think that is an important piece of today's story is the what I like to call Instagram versus reality. Which is a little bit of, our story as investors is, okay, yeah, we love cash flow and I love a good cash on cash return. But at the same time, I'm also dealing with tenants and contractors. And so that we'll touch on all of that today. And so I find it really fitting. You and I were talking offline about Kilimanjaro. And I think that this is a great story of Instagram versus reality. So let's start by kind of painting the picture of where I was in my life as Sarah, not as the investor or the entrepreneur, but Sarah had made some bad choices when it comes to taking care of my body and making sure that I was exercising. I like to always joke like, oh yeah, I don't do that thing that people do, exercise. And so let me know in the chat, those of you that are here, are we exercising? Are we wishing we exercised more? Are we like, oh yeah, those people who exercise? I'd love to kind of get a feel in the room. Where are you guys at on this exercise spectrum? Because I'll take you back to, it was March 2023. And I actually had my arm in a sling because I had broken all 3 bones in my left arm. And I disintegrated my elbow. So I now have a prosthetic elbow, and I am in New York. I am one of the main stage speakers at a conference. And I actually specifically had a long sleeve dress so that I could like slide my cast into the dress of the arm. And that's kind of where we're at. So broken arm, hadn't exercised, interest in exercise. Like I know that a healthy body helps with a healthy mind and a healthy life. But that kind of paints the scene of where I'm at. And I own a company. In addition to owning real estate, I own a company called Invested Adventures, where I take real estate investors on epic trips around the world. And so these are small scale retreats. Real estate investors are invited. So if you're here in the room and you want to be invited, definitely let me know. And I had a trip to Tanzania for the African safari portion of the trip. So sitting on my arse, watching animals, maybe with a glass of wine in my hand, was a little more my speed, especially the fact that my hand was, in a sling. And so that kind of paints the picture of where I was in March. The trip was coming up in July. And I also gave my clients the option of doing an add-on to hike Kilimanjaro, which is the tallest mountain in all of Africa and the the seventh tallest peak in the world. Is that
so? It's the tallest freestanding mountain in the world that's not part of a mountain range, and certainly the highest peak on the continent of Africa. So therefore, one of the 7 summits.
Yes, there we go. Thank you. And so really, really tall. Okay, you guys. And so insert really, really challenging. Well, I had been asking the universe to send me a sign. So whether you believe in signs or whatever you believe in, I had kind of been saying like, okay, I feel this pull to change my life and start doing that thing that people do, exercise. But like life gets busy and I was fully nomadic, and that involves lots of friends' dinners and airplanes and airports, and consistency and routine were not, going hand in hand with a nomadic life. And I think if anyone exercises, it really is just about being consistent and showing up again and again and again. And so I wasn't showing up. And so I'm at this conference and a woman gets on stage and she says, before I introduce myself, I would like to get to know the audience. Can I ask a few of you to stand up and tell me about yourself? And this is a conference owned by my friend Alex Jimenez, who is also a digital nomad entrepreneur. I'm sure you know her. And she owns real estate. And so she wanted me to come and speak to travelers about the power of owning real estate. And so this is a room full of avid travelers, people working in the travel industry. And so the first woman stands up and she says, I charter sailing trips all over the world. And then another woman stands up and says, I help Indigenous women, create entrepreneurial ties to other countries. And then a woman stands up and I don't turn around. So I just hear this voice and she says, hello, my name is such and such, and I help plus size women with long through hikes. And I feel the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And as someone that identifies, whether I like it or not, as a plus size woman, I turn around like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, what do you, first of all, what do you mean you help plus size women with long through hikes? I was like, that is the most niche thing that I had never heard of. And I went, okay, God, or okay, universe, like, I hear you. And so Matt, during one of the intermissions, I went and I found this woman and I introduced myself reluctantly. And I was like, hi, I think I'm supposed to introduce myself to you. And so I start working with her. This is March of 2023. And I summited Kilimanjaro in July of 2023.
That is so amazing. And you know my story as well, which is that I ended up in Tanzania and some friends of mine were planning to hike Kilimanjaro. They're like, you should come with us. And I was like, okay. So I sign up for it 3 weeks before the ascent begins. And then after I sign up for it, then I start researching like prep for hiking Mount Kilimanjaro. And I'm like, oh, I better get on this. But I think that's such an amazing story. I think it ties in also with just your business spirit, your real estate investing spirit. And I think it's the perfect transition to jump in to your presentation tonight, which I know includes some of that philosophy and some of that story at the beginning. So let me just bring up these slides here and make sure that you can flip those. Do you see that button at the bottom that allows you to do that? And then I am just going to make myself take up less space for now on this webinar so that you can have the entire floor and explain to people how you have created this amazing lifestyle that you're living and how the folks on the webinar can do it too. I will let you run away with it. All yours.
Thank you, Matt. And thank you to the audience. Thank you guys for showing up on a Tuesday evening, no matter where you are in the world. I'm really, really glad that you're here. Let me know in the chat, where are you calling in from? Where are you at in investing? Are you a beginner? Are you intermediate? What does your portfolio look like? Whatever you want to tell me in the chat, but let's start with, where are you calling in from? And my name is Sarah Weaver, and I have become financially free in less than 5 years with real estate investing, specifically with what we're going to talk about today, medium-term rentals or midterm rentals. And so let me know in the chat, are you familiar with STR, MTR, LTR, or is this all a foreign language to you? And I will make sure that I answer questions throughout. I am a seasoned webinar presenter, and so I'm pretty good about following along in the chat. So if you have questions, please don't be shy. I love to know that I am not alone in the room on this Tuesday evening. And so Heather from Colorado, I'm really glad that you're here. Yes, I too love Colorado. So, all right, let's get started. So, I don't think this video will play, which is a-okay. I have already bored you guys enough with travel stories, and you will hear a lot more of them tonight. And so if you love travel, then you are in the right space. But if you love freedom to do what you want to do, you're an even better fit for the room. And so what I want everyone to do, and if you're willing to share in the chat, I would really appreciate it. But I want you to answer the question, what do you wish you had more time for? So what do you wish you had more time for? I have friends that wish that they had time to work out. We've talked about exercise. I have friends who wish that they had time to work in their garden. Sit down with a book and read a book. Like, God forbid it be a book for fun. I have a lot of clients who come to me and say, Sarah, I just want to spend more time with my kids. I have a client who's come to me and said, Sarah, I want to spend less time with my kids. No judgment. So what do you wish you had more time for? I know that there are people out there who wish that they could buy a bicycle that costs more than my first car and wear a very tight Lycra suit and ride that bicycle on Saturday mornings. I don't really understand these people, but I know that they exist, and they just want more time to spend on the hobbies that they love. And so let me know in the chat, what do you wish you had more time for? And throughout tonight's presentation, if I or Matt talk about travel, which happens to be what I wish I had more time for, I want you to come back and think of that thing that you wish you had more time for. Because for some of you, it might also be travel. But for some of you in this chapter of life that you're in, it might not be. And so I think it's important that we all kind of start with, what do we wish we had more time for in this life? All right. So I'm Sarah Weaver. This is me jumping out of airplanes. And when I'm not jumping out of airplanes, I am analyzing deals helping my clients and making sure that I am living my ideal life, which does involve quite a bit of travel. And so, Susan, I'm so glad that you're here. We have another Missourian. I live in Kansas City right now. And so Susan is in St. Louis. And excellent. Spoiling grandkids is excellent. I'm actually sitting in my grandma's house right now. My other grandma had surgery this morning, and surgery went well. And so I love being able to spend time with my family. And then excellent. Anna Perez, like us, wants flexibility of time and lives to travel. So Anna, you are in for a good evening of travel stories. And Susan, I love that you are in property management. You're going to understand a lot of the trials and tribulations that come along with being a real estate investor. And so I have traveled to 54 countries on all 7 continents because I said yes to travel, but more importantly, I said yes to investing in real estate, which actually has not kept me tied to one place, but gave me more freedom than I ever could imagine, which we'll talk about today. And then I have worked remotely for 8.5 years. And oh, wow, this actually needs to be updated. I have worked remotely for 9 years, and I was fully nomadic for the last 6 years. And then I just recently stopped being nomadic. I'm trying to be a real girl and live in one place. It's not going very well because, as Matt said, I was in Sri Lanka last month and I'm going to Guatemala next week. So I'm still a little bit nomadic, but I do have a home base now, which is new. And then I own 20 rental units in 4 US states. They are in Kansas, Missouri. So, hey, Susan, Iowa, and Nebraska. And as a world traveler, I did not set out to own rentals in these wonderful Midwest states, but here I am. And 10 of the 20 units are furnished rentals, which we'll talk about tonight. And then lastly, my 3 businesses bring in 6 figures each, and they fit my lifestyle. And so if you are looking to get out of your W-2 or out of the rat race or start your own business, I think the most important thing, whether it's be your own boss or have more cash flow from rental properties, it's whatever you do needs to fit your lifestyle. And so I'm actually not a huge advocate of quit your job. I don't necessarily think you need to quit your job, but I do really like seeing people have jobs that fit their lifestyle and fit their needs. So we're going to talk about that tonight as well. And so I wrote the book on midterm rentals or medium-term rentals. It is a 30-day stay, a real estate investor's guide to mastering the medium-term rental, published by Bigger Pockets. And inside this book, it really is a step-by-step guide on how to use this strategy, how to buy properties in places that you don't live. And so I know that we have some LA and California folks in the room. You might be interested in buying something out of state or long distance. And that is exactly what I did. I just happened to go long distance and spend most of my time outside of the US while buying inside of the US. And so we'll talk about how I did that as well. But tonight is for you guys. This is not about me. Tonight is me showing up because I adore Matt and what he's doing and what he's built. And so if you guys have any questions, please put them in the chat. I am following along. And so first, let me just start by saying that I buy boring buildings in arguably boring markets. Susan, I mean, no offense to our lovely state of Missouri or, the beautiful Midwest. I think by the end of this presentation, everyone's going to fall in love with that slice of our country because it has allowed me to build a real estate portfolio that I love and adore. But these are not, they're not bad. Look at my first house. It's quite cute. I always love this photo because especially for my friends abroad, this looks so picturesque and American and like a nice American film. And I agree. But these are not, sexy condos in Barcelona or beautifully, decorated accent walls with neon signs. They are just pretty boring run-of-the-mill properties that make really not boring profits, which we'll talk about today. And so excellent. Heather says, I love Missouri. We own a short-term rental in Table Rock Lake. Excellent. So you are definitely going to like tonight's presentation because I really think people are overlooking this part of the country And it's fantastic. So you live in beautiful Colorado, but you invest in Table Rock Lake. I think that's exactly the message that I'm trying to send. I want people to live where they want, but invest where the numbers make sense. So if you're going to write anything down from today's presentation, that might be it. I want you to live where you want and invest where the numbers make sense. And so before I jump into numbers, I'd like to show you what I call my kind of roadmap for becoming financially free in 5 years or less. And in the theme of travel, I have put a photo of me and my friend here in Antarctica. I am seeing my first iceberg, and that is just pure joy and excitement right there. I cannot believe that I get to live this life. So the first step is pick a market. I'm going to say this bluntly, stop overcomplicating it. It really isn't that hard. I'm trying to apply this same theory to my dating life. One of my real estate portfolio is much better than my dating profile. But I urge you as a real estate investor to pick a market. We could spend the next hour, if not days, weeks, months, or even the better part of this year talking about how to pick a market, what market's best. Oh, but such and such publication said that this is the top 10 market to invest. Stop overcomplicating it. Instead, pay attention to real numbers and real metrics, which I'm going to give you, where I find them, the tools that I use, and really just follow how to pick a good market and then just stick with that market. I work with countless real estate investors. I run my own community and coaching program, and I have countless investors that really agonize over what market to pick. And we're really lucky. We are in a country where a lot of markets actually work. And so I encourage you to just pick a market and then stick with it. And so I'm going to give you guys my free guide to analyze markets. This walks you through the 5 metrics that I like to use. I could do an hour-long presentation just on this alone, but frankly, I think it makes for a very boring presentation, which is why I've given you this free guide. But in short, this is what I want you guys to do. I want you guys to look at job rates, because we want job growth in an area that we are investing in, because we want a population that is employed. Just in case anyone hasn't given you the basics on real estate investing, the only way that we make money is if someone lives in our property and pays us. That is, rental income comes in, expenses, and if you have a mortgage payment, that goes out, and that money that's left over is called cash flow or profit. And so that's really the only way that we are going to make money as real estate investors. Of course, there's appreciation, but I like to invest for cash flow. And so we need a strong job market because we want our population to be employed. And then that leads me to metric number 2, which is population. I also want population going up and not going down, because we need people wanting to live in this market or needing to live in this market. They don't always want to, but they might need to because of metric number 1, the job that they have chosen. So we want job growth. We want population growth. Next, I want to see wage and income growth. We can all argue that wage growth is not keeping up with inflation or the cost of living, but that's not the argument. I just want to see that my potential tenant pool is making more money over time. So there is not only job growth in this area, but there's also wage growth. Because metric number 4 is rent rate increase. I want to see that other landlords, other investors in that market are increasing rent over time, so that I can also increase rent over time. Not because I'm a slumlord, not because I want to get my tenants, but because I'm a businesswoman and my expenses are going up over time. Property taxes are increasing, as well as insurance rates. And so I need rent to also increase over time to keep up with these expense increases. And so those really are kind of what I like to call the common sense metrics. So we want job growth, population growth, wage growth and rent rate increases or rent growth. So as long as those things are going up, I'm happy. And then my fifth metric is home price increases, because this is not monopoly money. This is real money that I'm investing with. And I want to see that my property is going to increase in value over time. I have already said that I tend to be a cash flow investor rather than an appreciation play or an appreciation investor. However, I want to see that my property is exceeding a 6% appreciation rate, which happens to be the national average. So 6% is the national average. I want to see at least 7. 1 year I saw a 17% appreciation gain in 1 year in Omaha, Nebraska, of all places. And so you don't necessarily have to invest in Colorado or LA. You can invest in some of these Midwest markets and see appreciation. Am I going to see 17% year over year? Well, no, of course not. That is not my expectation. But man, it felt really good when it happened. And so that does help with that, national average of 6%. So those are my metrics. The last one, kind of a bonus metric, is the only one that I want to see going down over time, which is crime rates. I want crime going down in my market, not only to keep my tenants safe, which is my biggest priority, but also because it also helps keeping those insurance rates from jumping. When you invest in an area with violent crime, not only is your tenant pool at risk, but also you are at risk of having increased insurance rates. And so that's kind of my no nonsense guide to picking a market. I have put a ton of details in that resource for you. There's a reason that I don't list out these metrics on the slide. I really want you guys hearing me when I say that these are common sense things, right? We want people living there. We want these employed people making more money over time so that we can increase rent. We want our home price going up and we want crime going down. So very no nonsense. And as long as my market hits all of that, then I'm in. Let's invest. All right. Next is I want you guys to pick a strategy. So Heather's already shared that she's familiar with MTR, LTR, and STR. But for those of you that are not, let me walk you through with some of the investing strategies that you could use. So first, we have your long-term rental, or LTR. That is your typical, I buy the property, I list it vacant, I'm looking for a tenant, usually for a 12-month lease term, and this is kind of your typical rental. Next, you have short-term rentals. These are furnished rentals, probably listed on a website like Furnished Finder, Airbnb, VRBO. Most of you in the room are familiar with short-term rentals. You've probably stayed in one, or like Heather, you own one already. And then midterm rentals or medium-term rentals, these are also furnished rentals, but they're not short-term rentals. They're medium-term, meaning you are renting them furnished for 30 days or more. So I love this strategy for many reasons, but the biggest reason is it helps me have increased rental income versus a long-term rental, which might have less rental income. But it also helps me skirt around some of the short-term rental regulations that we're seeing pop up, not only in our country, but all over the world. And so a medium-term rental could be classified as a 30-day stay, a 90-day stay, a 6-month stay. I've actually had someone live in my furnished unit for 26 months, paying midterm rental rates for that 26-month period. And so that was amazing. We saw over 100% occupancy for over 2 years, which I, of course, love seeing as a real estate investor. But when I say pick a strategy, I need you to pick a strategy that works for you. So whether it be long-term, midterm, or short-term, it needs to make sense not only for you and for the market that you pick, but also for your lifestyle. I have had countless real estate investors or aspiring real estate investors come to me and say something like, okay, I'm looking to make more money this year. So go ahead, you guys, put more money in the chat if you also are looking to make more money this year. I would love to hear some enthusiasm around this. Let me see some exclamation points. I have people that are wanting to make more money, and not spend more time away from their family. And so I had a gentleman, he came to me and he said, okay, here's what I'm thinking. I'm going to buy 4 short-term rentals this year. I'm going to self-manage all of them because I want to have active participation in them for tax purposes. And I need to do this because my wife is upset with me because I'm spending too much time at work and she is going to leave me. And I said, listen, instead of investing in real estate, I need you to invest in a divorce attorney because your wife is going to leave you if you buy 4 short-term rentals and you self-furnish, self-manage. That's not a good strategy for what you're doing. And so obviously I'm being facetious, but I think it's really important that you're honest with your time availability and time commitment that you're looking for. And so for some of us, a turnkey provider, like Matt's amazing company, Maverick, that is the right fit for your investing. Something that is more hands-off, going to take less time. That is the right strategy for you. Or you might be like me and you like a mix. So sometimes I buy something that is called value add. A value add property is something that needs to be renovated or it could be renovated. It's going to be something that adds value to the property, like taking a 3-bedroom, 1-bath and turning it into a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, which I have done. That increases value, makes it not only appreciate, it's kind of forced appreciation because the price point or the value of the home has gone up, but also it's more valuable to a potential tenant, which then demands increased rent. And so that's one of the strategies that I love to do. I love to find a value add property where I do some type of small renovation and it increases both demand and rental price over time. I also love doing what's called the BRRRR strategy. Is anyone familiar with BRRRR in the chat? It stands for buying, renovating, so that value add that I'm talking about, and then you rent it out. And then you take those executed leases to a bank and you say, hey, can I refinance? So it's buy, renovate, rent, refinance. And that allows us to recycle some of the money that we're using. And so these are just a few of the investing strategies. You could talk about creative financing, doing lease to own or rent to own. You could flip. You could become a flipper, which is more of a job, a job, than I would say an investing strategy. But these are all examples of strategies. And so I think it's really important that once you pick a market, you pick a strategy that works for where you're at. And let me be really clear. You can do multiple strategies, but I don't believe that you can do multiple strategies simultaneously. So yes, have I done a value add, then a midterm rental, then a partnership, and then a value add all in the same summer or all in the same year? Absolutely. But I think what happens is investors get so distracted. Give me the word distracted in the chat if you've ever been distracted. Not saying that you are right now, but if you've ever been distracted or gotten distracted, I think that trying to do too much at once is one of the problems that I see real estate investors do. And so pick a strategy. And it doesn't mean that you're going to stick with that strategy for the next 10 years. It's just that that's the strategy that I'm going to focus on for the next 90 days because it best fits my financial needs and where I'm at. And so let me tell you a little bit more. Excellent. So Susan is distracted. Matt's distracted. I definitely have times where I'm very distracted, especially when it comes to my real estate investing, which is why I think it's really important to zero in on what am I trying to accomplish? What do I want this money to do for me? Sarah Weaver helped me pick a market. She's now helped me pick a strategy. And so now I'm going to focus. So let me show you why I love the midterm rental strategy. This is a photo of a building that I now own. I actually saw this for rent sign in the yard. And of course, I called the number, but instead of inquiring about the property as a potential tenant, I let him know that I was interested in purchasing the property. And so this is a fourplex. I'm going to put this in the chat just because it's not included in the description here. It's a fourplex in Omaha, Nebraska, which actually happens to be where I'm sitting right now, visiting my grandma. And so this is a fourplex. I know they look like duplexes, but they are 4 units and they are all 1 bed, 1 bath units. So 1 bed, 1 bath units. And so let me show you guys the numbers on this. So I purchased this in May of 2021, and the purchase price was $328,000, which, yes, was market rate. I actually didn't necessarily get a deal, even though you LA investors are probably thinking, I'm sorry, what? You bought a 4-unit building for 328? Yes, I did. And the current rent on the property at the time was about $750 or $775 per unit, which would have been $3,100 in rental income if I had ran all 4 units as long-term rentals. And so let's have a moment of honesty. I appreciate those of you being honest, saying that you're distracted, but tell me, do you guys like this deal? So here are the numbers. The PITI, which stands for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, which is essentially your monthly payment as the owner, is $2,003. The cash flow, once you take $3,100 rental income and you set aside 5% for capital expenditures, 5% for maintenance and repairs, 10% for property management, and another 8% vacancy. And then the only reason that it's 2% utilities is just I needed to show you guys the math. Don't actually use 2% utilities in lawn care. Actually find out the data, but I wanted to show you this. So once I take out the $2,170 of expenses and the $2,003 of principal, interest, tax, and insurance, I am left with a whopping $167 of cash flow. Now, let me know in the chat, is this hot or not? Are you buying this property? And listen, I won't be offended either way. Do you like this deal? $167 of cash flow for the whole building. That's not per unit. Is this a good deal, a great deal? Heather says not. What do you think, Anna, Susan, Matt? Hot, not? It depends is also an answer. What do you guys think? Keep in mind, this is in Omaha, Nebraska, so we're not experiencing, a ton, good compared to California deals, says Matt. We're not experiencing a ton of appreciation. And so for me, as a cash flow focused investor, I agree with Heather. This is not a deal. Anna agrees. She says no. Okay, but Sarah, why did you buy it? Okay, Ava likes it. Ava says it's good. Well, the reason that I bought it is because I knew that I could turn some of these, maybe even all of them, into midterm rentals or furnished rentals. And so I'm going to click to the next slide. And I want to be really clear. The only numbers that are going to change is the rent, because the rent is going to increase with midterm rentals. And therefore, we hope that the cash flow also increases. But the purchase price stays the same no matter what strategy you use. And your PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, stays the same. Exactly. Susan says not enough for maintenance costs. Excellent. So we don't like that we're only doing 5% maintenance and repairs and only getting 167. It's just not a lot of room for error, is it, Susan? You're exactly right. As a property manager, you know that things are not always going to be 5% maintenance and repairs. So let me show you. I'm going to click to the next slide. Let's see what happens to this $3,100 or $775 per unit when I implement the midterm rental strategy. All right, so here we go. The purchase price stays the same at $328, as I said. And then the current rent with midterm rentals is actually going to be $7,500 for the whole building, which is $1,875 per unit, which is, yes, what midterm rentals demand in Omaha, Nebraska. Your principal, interest, tax, and insurance stays the same at $2,003, which makes our cash flow, and you can see here I actually put in the vacancy and lawn care costs. It creates a cash flow of $2,547 a month. Now, let's do a hot or not. Do you guys like this deal or no? Are you buying this midterm rental knowing that the price is $328? Excellent. Matt says hot. Heather says hot. Exactly. So not only did I buy this tan building, I also own the blue building next door. And I run all 8 units as midterm rentals. And so that means that I am getting 7,500 times 2. And my PITI for the building next door is actually $2,017 is my PITI next door. And so I am experiencing some really good cash flow on these 2 properties. Heather asked a great question. Does your vacancy percent go up though? So Heather, when I first started analyzing deals as a midterm rental, listen, I might jump out of planes. I might hike Kilimanjaro and navigate online dating. I'm a pretty risky girl, okay? But when it comes to my investing, I am conservative. This is not monopoly money. I need this money to work, and I need it to work for me now. And so you're exactly right, Heather. I was analyzing at a 10 to 15% vacancy when I first started analyzing midterm rentals. You know what's really cool about owning buildings in the same market is that you know your numbers really well because you own the building next door or you own a building, down the street. And so then I was able to calculate and analyze these deals based off real numbers. And you know what is really cool about the midterm rental strategy versus the short-term rental strategy is that you can experience really low vacancy. And so how I came up with 8% is it's still conservative based on my actuals, which is 3 to 5% vacancy. I'm experiencing 3 to 5% vacancy amongst all 8 units in this particular market in Omaha. I am really close to hospital complexes. We'll talk in a couple slides about who my tenants are. But I have incredible occupancy rates on these properties. I am spending increased time on keeping my units filled. So for example, when I'm coming up on a unit that's about to be vacant in 2 weeks, I am actively messaging people on Furnished Finder. I am refreshing my listing on Airbnb and VRBO and Furnished Finder by doing some tricks that I'll talk about in a couple slides. So it does take a little bit more increased time. And when I say increased time, we're talking about 25 to 60 minutes a week when a unit is about to become vacant. But I'm also seeing 47% of my tenants renew or extend. That is my sweet spot. So almost 1 in every 2 is sending that glorious message that is saying, hey, Sarah, I just extended my contract. Can I renew my lease? And so 47% of my tenants actually don't just stay 1 or 3 months. They're staying 6, 9, or even 18 months, which helps keep that vacancy low and occupancy really high. And so I can confidently say that I'm seeing 8% vacancy or less for these particular buildings. Again, I was way more conservative when I was first analyzing deals, and I encourage you guys to do the same. So I liked seeing 10 to 15% vacancy on my initial analysis, but now I am experiencing 8% vacancy. And so again, thank you guys so much for being active in the chat. And thank you, Heather, for asking that question. And so as you guys can see, this is why I love midterm rental. We went from bringing in $3,100, which is still great. I mean, I'm not complaining about owning long-term rentals in Omaha, Nebraska either. But I love when I put on my investor hat and I start thinking, how could I make my money work better for me? And if I furnish these units, what kind of rental income could I demand? And how does that affect my expenses? And that's when we're seeing that increase up to 7,500. And then if something's working, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's buy the block, right? So that's why I bought the building next door. And so in short, that's why I love this I call this the MTR LTR smackdown. You can have $170 of cash flow or $2,500 of cash flow. And it's really clear to me which one I wanted. I want to make sure that you guys get all your questions answered. So keep asking them in the chat, but let's kind of whiz through some of the specifics for these properties. So who lives in these medium-term tenants, or who are these medium-term tenants, I should say? And travel nurses or travel medical professionals happens to be my most consistent tenant in this property because I bought next to or close to a hospital complex. So I specifically bought this building knowing that I'd be catering to travel medical professionals, which we have 300,000 vacancies for travel medical professionals as of 2025. And so this is a growing sector and a growing need, especially in Omaha, Nebraska. I also get all sorts of tenants. So these are construction workers who maybe their company brought them in to work on a construction site for a short amount of time. They don't want to live at the Motel 8 because they want a kitchen, maybe even something more than a kitchenette. They also just want to feel at home. I unfortunately have had tenants who they want that home feeling because they have a loved one in that said hospital complex. So not only have I catered toward travel medical professionals who are working at the hospital, but I've also housed people who have a family member in the hospital. And unfortunately, I actually was at the hospital this morning. My grandmother had surgery this morning, and I spent about 5 hours in the waiting room. And yeah, you are not excited to go back to a Motel 8 if you've just spent all day sitting in a hotel or a hospital waiting room or a hospital room with your loved one. You really want to come home to at least some type of a homey feel, which is why these midterm rentals or, extended stay furnished rentals are really great for people like that. I've had interns, I've had all sorts of professionals that for whatever reason, they are spending time in this area and just need something. I've also housed people who maybe their job has moved them to the area and they aren't ready to buy their forever home or their next home. And so they choose to live in my unit for maybe up to 90 days while they look for their next house. And then for any of us that have ever bought properties, we know that that isn't always a smooth transition. And so they may need to extend their stay. Either they can't get under contract or they need to renovate that new place. Speaking of renovations, I've also housed people who they were renovating their own home. So I had a couple, they both worked from home and they had 2 dogs. And so they were doing a big renovation project on their house that they live in. And they were like, we cannot live in a renovation project. For anyone that has lived in a renovation project, it can be really hard on your sanity and really hard on your marriage. And so good for them. They came and they lived in my unit while their unit was renovated or their house was being renovated. And then because I'm a savvy investor, I made sure that I blocked off that unit from being booked by anybody else, because I thought there was probably a 95% chance that they too were going to extend. And sure enough, I get a panic message from them. Oh my gosh, our kitchen renovation is taking longer than we expected. Can we extend our stay in yours? And I said, you got it. I already anticipated this. And so, yes, you can stay in my unit. And so those are some of the people that stay in our unit. And Susan, I see your question. I'm going to make sure that I answer your question. So keep putting your questions in the chat. I wanted to show you guys one more example. This is a duplex in Des Moines, Iowa. It looks like a single family, but it is what we call an up-down duplex. So there's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath unit on the bottom and a 2-bed, 1-bath unit on the top. And I purchased this for $183,500. Yes, a duplex. And if you believe this, it was a completely renovated, rent-ready turnkey property. I mean, unbelievable, some of these properties that you can purchase. And so I bought this for under $185,000, completely renovated and rent ready. And I furnished just the upstairs unit. And I am getting $1,900 as a midterm rental. And then my tenant downstairs, I actually need to update this slide. I just renewed a new lease, and the long-term tenant was paying $850. I now have him up to 1,100. And so you guys, I'm bringing in $3,000 in rent now. And my PITI is only 884. 884. I mean, unbelievable. So we're seeing $3,000 of rental income. That is a pretty amazing cash flowing property for the Midwest. So again, this is why I love the midterm rentals. And so utilities, Susan's asking about utilities. So the tenants would put their name on the utilities if it's a long-term rental. So let's use this house as an example. This house does not have metered water. So I, the landlord, am paying water for the whole building, regardless if it's a long-term rental or a midterm rental. So Susan, when I analyze this property, I am not having to increase utility prices on water because it's actually the same for long-term and midterm. If I have a long-term tenant living in the bottom unit, which I do, he is paying for his electric and gas. So his name is on there. But because I'm offering a furnished unit upstairs, the gas and utility, or the gas and electric, is under my name. For this particular property, I'm also paying sewer as the landlord, whether and wastewater, regardless if it's a long-term or a medium-term rental. And so for some of these multifamily properties, the cost difference or expense difference between it being a long-term rental and a furnished rental is almost nominal. Whereas for a single family home, sometimes it does make sense for you to continue to run it as a long-term rental, because as a long-term rental, your tenants are paying for gas, water, electric, trash, sewer, wastewater, cable, internet. But as a midterm rental, those costs would then be mine if I'm offering this as a furnished rental. And if the rental increase is not enough to cover the expense of all of those utilities, sometimes it does make sense to keep properties as a long-term rental. So please let me know if you have any questions about what I just shared. So I have one single family home in my portfolio that it continues to be a long-term rental. Actually, it was that very first house that I showed you in that very first picture, the single family with the blue door. That still is a long-term rental, even though I wrote the book on midterm rentals. I love midterm rentals. It makes more financial sense to keep that property as a long-term rental, because with increased expenses, especially snow removal, that would have been a big cost last year as we had a really big snowstorm. It makes more sense to keep that one as a long-term rental. So again, that's why I'm not saying that midterm rental is the only strategy. It's really important that you guys put your investor hat on and you pick what strategy makes sense for you. So, excellent. I love these questions. Another kind of property management question is, Susan says, do you do applications and run credit as you would in a long-term rental? And the answer is it depends, which isn't that everybody's favorite answer on one of these big presentations. No, but it depends. It depends what type of tenant it is. So if it is a travel medical professional, I don't run a full criminal background check and background check, because I know that the hospital has already done that. They've done fingerprints, they've done FBI and crime and background checks. And so I'm just doing a regular check to see that they haven't had evictions. And then I am talking to their landlord references. If you are an experienced travel medical professional, that means that you have traveled the country, staying in places for at least 13-week contracts. And so you likely have a few landlords that have experienced you living in their unit. And I want to talk to those landlords. I want to know, did Jenny pay rent on time? Was she respectful? Did she pay late? Did she damage the unit? And then really simple, would you rent to Jenny again? And so 95% of the time, the answer is, yep, Jenny was great. Jenny paid on time. Great. Now I'm going to rent to Jenny. And I'm doing that for all types of tenants, long-term, midterm. If they are a travel nurse, not a travel nurse, I'm always checking 3 landlord references. I think that's really important. And then I'm only doing like a full application and running credit on non-travel medical professional midterm rental tenants, and then of course long-term rental tenants. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, let me show you another example of a midterm rental. This is a stock photo. This is not a property that I own, but I have met thousands of investors because I travel the country teaching presentations and teaching people how to invest. And there is an investor that I met, and he came up to me and he said, "Thank you so much for writing your book. I read it and I turned my house in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho into a midterm rental." And he was really eager to share the numbers with me, which I'm going to share with you guys right now. So as a long-term, he could rent this house for $1,900. And as a midterm, he could rent it for $2,400. Now, circling back to what we just talked about, with the increased utility cost and expenses, going from $1,900 to $2,400 might not have made sense. Even though a $500 increase per month sounds great, by the time you furnish the property, you start paying for things like water, electric, internet, snow removal, especially being in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. They have a lot of snow. It might not make sense. And so why would he come up to me and thank me for my book? Well, there's one other type of tenant that we haven't talked about yet, and it's called the displaced insurance policy holder. So that's displaced insurance policy holder. Now, this is just a fancy way of saying someone that holds an insurance policy, which is most of us. We have insurance when we live in these properties, especially if we own them. We have homeowners insurance. And unfortunately, because of man-made and natural disasters, there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who then become displaced. So unfortunately, a family in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho experienced a fire. Everyone was safe, but their home was no longer livable. So they became what we call displaced. They were a displaced insurance policy holder. Well, now their insurance policy is going to pay the rent of the temporary housing that they're going to have to find. And oftentimes it is increased from what you would get from a regular midterm rental. And so this gentleman who owns this house in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, was able to not only find, but secure and rent to a displaced insurance policyholder for $3,800 a month. So you guys tell me, let's do another hot or not. Are you excited about this particular property? Also in a beautiful place, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I hear the Kardashians vacation there. That would not necessarily be a poll for me, but if it's good enough for the Kardashians, it's probably good enough for me. And so do you guys want to own a place where you can rent it out for $3,800? Because I do. Yes, it's very hot. And so I love this displaced insurance policy holder as a potential tenant. And it is a tenant pool that I highly recommend you consider. I have lots of tools that I can give you, lots of resources that I can share with you on how to find them. But this is a great tenant option for specifically these single family homes. I've already shared with you guys, I own a fourplex. I own a duplex or an up-down duplex. And those are great for travel medical professionals, people looking for temporary housing. These single family homes, they are excellent midterm rentals for these displaced insurance policy holders. And so as you can imagine, I could probably teach 10 to 20 hours just on this strategy alone. But these are some of the examples of the types of tenants that could live in your properties. And so you might be asking, okay, Sarah, how on earth could I analyze how to price my property? Here is another great resource for you. It is a very short, I think it's a 3-4 minute video. If anything, it's going to underwhelm you. I did not create this video to say, wow, Sarah is so smart. You're going to watch this and you're going to say, wait, that's it? Yes, that's it. It is pretty simple. It's straightforward. It's a step-by-step guide to how to price your MTR. If you watch this video and you have follow-up questions, just simply reply to the email and I will continue to send you guys resources. But I'm a huge believer. I don't want to spam you with emails. So you're only going to get just this one video if you sign up for that. Next, if you would like a copy of my book, I love MTR.com. we'll give you a 10% off coupon. We love saving money. Or if you don't want to wait, just go straight to Amazon. I don't have any coupon that works on Amazon or Audible. Yes, this can be an audiobook. And no, it is not the sultry sound of my voice reading it to you. And so if you're sick of hearing from me, you can still get the audio. It's somebody else reading the book. And it includes all of the details of everything we've talked about tonight. Okay, so you must pick a strategy that works for you. That is really probably all we have time for tonight. I want you guys to pick a market, pick a strategy that works for you, and ask questions. You can already give yourself a pat on the back because you guys are doing a lot of the hard work by showing up on a Tuesday evening, asking really good questions, staying active in the chat, hanging out with someone as brilliant as Matt Bowles. And I thank you, Matt, for having me tonight, and just want to really open up some time for more questions, and then we can wrap up.
Sarah, thank you. And everybody that is still here, did I tell you that Sarah Weaver is the real deal? Type into the chat if you guys got some value from this webinar tonight. And also, any final questions that you have for Sarah, go ahead and type them in here. And she can answer them before we close out tonight. We are also recording this, folks. So I want to mention that because there was a lot of information that Sarah went through here tonight. So you are going to be able to review this webinar. You can go slow and you can pause it and you can go frame by frame and you can rewind some stuff that she said and kind of parse through it if this was a lot of new information for you. And also for folks that were not on this webinar tonight who are watching it for the first time on a recording, I just want to make sure that you have the ways to find and follow and connect with Sarah. You saw those QR codes and then her website, sarahweaver.com. And you can just email her hello@sarahweaver.com to connect. So I just want to make sure everybody can come into Sarah's ecosystem, because Sarah's ecosystem is an awesome place to hang out. I just had the privilege of hanging out with her community and a lot of the folks that are mentored by her and coached by her and have built their own wealth and travel lifestyles by hanging around with her and have gone on some of her trips and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a really cool group of people that she has attracted. So would encourage you to at least, grab some of her stuff, get on her email list, follow her on social media, and hang around Sarah Weaver, because you are sure to learn some amazing things from doing that. So any final questions, feel free to drop them in the chat right now and Sarah will answer them.
Excellent. Yeah. So let's talk about furnishing first. And then Heather, I see your question about boosting posts. I'll make sure I touch on that as well. So the furnishing piece, I think, is really key, because we get a lot of investors who are like, ooh, I love decorating. I love shopping. And I go, ooh, no, we are investors first. And so I love investing in furniture that is adorable, which is, of course, a technical term, but also durable. And so when I'm furnishing my next furnished rental, I'm actually doing a lot of research. I'm looking at who is my ideal tenant, and I'm furnishing for them. So if I know I want, I'm not a real estate agent, so I can say things that would break the law. If I want a young, cute 20-something to live in my apartment, well, then I'm going to furnish it to attract a young, cute 20-something. That is not inappropriate, by the way. I truly mean that. When I furnished my first property, it was in an area where a lot of recent college grads would move. And so I knew I wanted, to furnish to the type of tenant that would likely live in that property. So I'm doing the same thing when I'm furnishing midterm rentals. They don't need to be young, attractive, cute 20-somethings, nothing like that. But I know that they are likely going to be working professionals who are going to want to live somewhere that's pretty. Because again, even those people that are spending time at the hospital with their loved ones, they want to come home to something that feels good. And then feels good is important. So that is a comfortable couch, incredible bedding. We are not a fan of bad bedding, and we are not a fan of a bad mattress. And so those are the things I'm focusing on. I want it to be adorable while being durable. And I want a great mattress, great bedding, and blackout curtains. Anything outside of that is really going to depend on the market. And so The reason that I put in the chat, saradweaver.com/Aria, ARYA, is because I actually started a furnishing company. My company, Aria Design Services, we actually will furnish the properties for you. And so, Susan, this is a great resource for you as a property manager in St. Louis. If you have smart investors like Heather and Anna and Ava and Matt who decide to buy something in St. Louis, Missouri, even though they don't live there, they might not want to fly there and like schlep furniture together. So they could hire Aria Design Services and we will do it for them. And what I like about my company, Aria, is that we are investors first and interior designers second. And so I'm not buying a beautiful tan Moroccan poof because I know that Moroccan poof is going to get dirty and it's not going to last more than 2 or 3 guests. Instead, I'm investing in adorable, durable furniture and decor that's also going to photograph well and set me above my competition. So that's the first thing that I do. So when you ask Anna about furnishing, look at your competition and just be 5 to 10% better than them. So you don't have to break the budget. You don't have to be 2 to 5 times better than them. Just be 5 to 10% better than your competition. And so I do that often with great art, which can be really inexpensive nowadays. Sorry, artisans and local artists, we can get really good replicable art from places like At Home. That's actually one of my favorite places to get rugs and art. Even Home Depot has great art and outdoor furniture. Menards has also really affordable outdoor furniture. I'm not skimping on the mattress. I like Zinus and Helix. Those are my 2 favorite mattress types. I should get an affiliate. Mattress affiliates are fantastic, but I truly believe in those 2 companies. And then great area rugs. And big enough area rugs. That's one of my pet peeves is walking into a room and there's a little 3x5 rug. No, buy the 8x12 from a great store like At Home. And so those are some of my furnishing tips. I could write an entire book just on furnishing. Inside my book, there is a chapter on furnishing, and I'm happy to answer more questions. You also, I always forget this, the marketer in me needs to be better at this. You can also buy my furnishing list for $99, and it actually has all of the actual links to what I recommend purchasing. Let me drop that link in the chat. And so for $99, you can save yourself hours and hours and hours and actually just buy what I recommend. And we update these links every month. And I send out, some helpful tips with that. So for $99, you can actually get a spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet is amazing because it goes by room. And it not only links to actual products that I recommend, but then it can act as your checklist. Because for anyone that's furnished a place, I don't know if you experienced this, Heather, but how many times have did I buy a toaster? I don't know if I bought a toaster and then I end up buying 2 toasters. So having a checklist that can kind of keep you organized is also really important. Sean asked about midterm rental maintenance costs include wall painting and major cleaning. What's really nice about midterm rentals is that your cleaner is in there more often. And so you're not having to do these huge turnovers and things like wall painting as often as you are with these long-term tenants. Because keep in mind, oftentimes why the walls are scuffed up is because your tenant is bringing in and out their own furniture. And so I find that I'm actually doing a lot less paint touch-ups on the midterm rentals, especially if I'm catering to these travel medical professionals. These units are barely lived in. Oftentimes my cleaners messaging me and saying things like, Sarah, I don't even think they used the oven. And I say, listen, if they're anything like me, someone that doesn't like to cook, that works long hours and travels a lot, yeah, these travel medical professionals, they're probably going to work for 12-hour shifts and coming home and doing Uber Eats or going out of town on their days off. And so oftentimes these units are actually less lived in with less wear and tear than some of my long-term units. Not to say that I'm not replacing some of those rugs, especially because I allow pets. That is why I do a pet deposit and a pet fee, as well as a security deposit. And then the other reason that I buy affordable 8x12 rugs at a store like At Home, where they're cheaper than the pet fee. And so essentially, I know that I'm going to replace things like couches and rugs in between some of these stays. And so I make sure that I buy affordable couches and rugs. And then the last question that I will answer is, I mentioned tools that boost your Airbnb and Furnish Finder. Heather, I wish that there was a tool. The tool is me and my hands. And so here are the tips that I have for refreshing and boosting your Airbnb listing and Furnish Finder listing. It's very elementary. So Furnish Finder still doesn't have a great algorithm. I'm actually in constant contact with the CEO and the team over at Furnish Finder. I love and adore them. And they know that their website is very, very behind compared to a great website like Airbnb. And so you do need to manually update your listing description, your listing title, and the dates of availability on your Furnish Finder listing. And I do it every other day when I have a vacancy coming up. Okay, let me say that. I am updating or making tweaks to the listing description and the listing title every other day when I'm actively looking for a tenant. Whew, that sounds like a lot of work. It's really not. It takes less than 7 minutes now, where I log into Furnish Finder, I make a small tweak to the title, a small tweak to the listing description, and just that act of editing will then help you show up higher in the listing or the algorithm. And then this is very simple. I do this both on Airbnb and Furnish Finder. I simply go into the photos and I move them around, meaning I'm just changing the order of the photos. It sounds ridiculous, and it is, but that also helps you show up higher in the search. And then for availability, your availability calendar inside of Furnish Finder, there's like a manual date that you can pick. I will usually just toggle between. So if I know that I have a vacancy coming up, it's available on February 27th, then I will make it available on the 28th, available on the 27th, when I'm going in those every other day and changing those. If you don't use Furnish Finder, everything I just said probably goes over your head. But if you're using that website, yes, that is all I do. And it does help me show up higher. I'm also messaging. This is the other like optimization. I wish that there was a tool for this, but I'm doing it manually. Is I am messaging not only matched leads, of course, that means that they've on Furnish Finder said that they want to stay in my property, but I'm also messaging unmatched leads, as well as the third category, which is people that don't match my lead. So their budget might be $1,500, but I'm charging $1,900 for that duplex in Des Moines. I go ahead and I do message them. And I say, hey, Jill, I see that you're looking for a great place to stay in Iowa. I actually have a unit available. Here's the link. Let me know if you have any questions. I'd love to host you. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes they are willing to bust their budget because they're only staying there for 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 months. And so they're only breaking their budget for a few months. And I try to shine light on that and put on my marketing hat. And sometimes that does work too. So I am messaging. Now, Sarah, how do you do this? How do you own ARIA? How do you host international retreats, as we mentioned earlier? How do you run a coaching business, write a book? You guys, I have a virtual assistant in the Philippines. And so I used to do these things like change the listing description and the title and move around the photos. That's how I know how to do it. But I have now trained a virtual assistant in the Philippines, and she's actually logging in every other day and she's doing it. So I have outsourced that. You can outsource for as low as $5 an hour. I am up to, I think, $8 an hour and $10 an hour for my 2 employees. But that is the low cost of incredible talent that's helping me kind of run all of these business. But yes, absolutely, Heather. I know, isn't it? It's fascinating. And Heather, when you start talking to the people that actually run the back end of Furnish Finder, it's like, oh, wow. But you realize that they're a small team. I think they have about 40 people on their team, whereas, Airbnb has thousands now. And so it makes a little bit more sense why one of these websites is completely up to date, state of the art, and the other one is lagging behind. But both of them give me great tenants. It changes every year which one gives me better tenants, or I should say more tenants. Right now I'm at about 60% are coming from Airbnb and 40% are coming from Furnished Finder. Whereas if you had asked me that in 2024, it was the opposite. And so I do use those two websites pretty religiously. So thank you guys for being such a great audience. Whew, I could talk for hours, as Matt already knows. But thank you for asking such good questions. And please follow up with me. I don't, give you my email for no reason. You can ask me anything. I'm not the fastest to get back to you. Matt can tell you I do take my time, but I do get back to you, and I get back to you with some really great, valuable information. So please email me if you have any questions.
Yes, and anybody that's watching this on the recording for the first time, hello@saradweaver.com is the email, and you can reach out with your follow-up questions, because obviously you didn't get them answered tonight. But thank you, everybody that was here, for all the engagement, all the awesome questions. What a fun evening. And of course, Sarah, this was awesome having you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for being a great audience, and thank you